Luckily, a fishing boat picked him up, and he had no serious injuries. In more global news, the international community has united against Russia's invasion of Ukraine, with many countries sending military aid to counter Russia's advance, as well as major economic sanctions against Russia, having destroyed their economy and making the Russian ruble worth less than a penny. Now over to Elliot for the Zoom.
Thank you, Griffin. I'm here joined by the amazing Dr. Johnson, Mr. Claymire, and our South's very own principal, Dr. Ullman. Let's start with Dr. Johnson. Any updates for us? And also, I heard you're at a school board meeting, state school board meeting, so I was wondering how that was going, and if you could give us any updates on that.
Yeah, good morning. Hi, Elliot. It's great to see you. It's been a while. And hi, Patrick, and everybody else on the team. Yep, so it's a busy week for us here at the Department of Education because we have 2 full days of school board meetings, State Board of Education meetings. Yesterday was our first day, and a big chunk of that day, the board divided up into committees. They have, excuse me, 5 committees based on the Alaska Education Challenge. So they have a committee on reading, a committee on career and technical education, closing the achievement gap and tribal compacting, a committee on effective educators and recruiting more teachers, and a committee on safety and well-being. So that was really good, and it's the first time in quite a while that the board had been together face-to-face, so it was a really productive day. Today starts here in just a little bit. The board has a meeting with the Joint Education Committee. So that means the Education Committee from the Alaska Senate and the Education Committee from the Alaska House. So they'll spend about an hour and a half with them just talking about how important you guys are, our students, and how we can all work together to do good things for you. Another thing, just as an example on how these sorts of things work, is the state board approves regulations related to education. So they have, I think, 3 regulation packages today they'll look at. One of them has to do with teacher certification and how we certify teachers and get them prepared to be in the classroom. And how the process works is we develop a proposal for regulations, and then we put that out for public comment. And then folks comment on it, and then the board considers that comment and votes. So in this case, teacher certification, Mr. Claymire came down to Juneau and was here for a couple days, and we were able to spend some time together. He actually bought me lunch. And we spent some time talking about those regulations. He and his team reviewed them and provided some really thoughtful feedback to the board. So what the board will see today has been modified somewhat based on those recommendations, and it also, the board will, whatever they do with the whether they adopt them or not today, they'll probably continue a period of interaction and engagement with stakeholders to keep modifying those. So that's how the process works, which is somewhat unique in our state for education. There's a lot of opportunity for public input, and we really embrace that at the department and like that. So the board will be talking about those regulations today, and then today is the end of the 2-day meeting, and then they'll have another meeting in June. So thanks for letting me give you an update.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Johnson. If I was a person who wanted to give some public input, how could I do that best?
Well, you could call me Elliot, because like you and I, we just, but the formal way to do it is you go on the department's website, and there's some links there where you can click, and you can either call in to a state board meeting and give verbal comment, or you can do like Mr. Claymire, you can send a letter to the board explaining your public comment. You can also send an email to the board. So there's multiple ways to provide that comment.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Johnson. It's great seeing you again. And with that, Mr. Claymire, do you have anything to add to that?
Good morning. No, nothing to add there, except for I would highly encourage those that are interested to participate in the process. Commissioner Johnson is sincere about the board's transparency and desire to include public input. That's good government, in my opinion. when citizens are involved, and then there's no surprises and there's no backlash later, because people find out about things later that were done, and they feel like they weren't a part of it. So I encourage everybody to get involved from the beginning. Um, yeah, there's lots going on. The momentum in the legislature has shifted a little bit towards talking about the budget, which is a good thing. But also, so in some ways, some of the earlier committees that we were having on education have slowed down, but the legislators are doing good, being able to multitask, and there are several other education related bills coming up. And then related to the budget, there are several for education funding, House Bill 272 and 3, which address the base student allocation, and House Bill 279, which would create a designated fund for public education, are going to be part right in the mix as part of that conversation. So looking excited to those. As always, we're working on our priority, our legislative priorities around retirement, class size, mental health issues, those kinds of things. The governor's teacher retention and recruitment working group has started its implementation phase. The last couple of years, they were doing sort of the research studying phase, and they came up with a list of recommendations, wrote an action plan. How are we going to deal with the teacher recruitment and retention? I would extend that to all education professions. The shortages are not just in classroom teachers, and the group really is doing that, addressing the system as a whole. And so excited about that work there. And then on a side note, I was pleased to attend the homecoming gala for Miss America last week. She was in Anchorage for Rondi and for her homecoming, and I also saw that she got to go to her alma mater at Service High School. But the reason why I attended, aside from 30 seconds of fame, vicariously, was in support of one of my former students who, as a result of Miss Alaska being selected as Miss America, moved up into the new Miss Alaska position, Ella Adkins. Both of her friends are educators, although both of her parents are educators and friends of mine, and Dr. Almonds, and they just retired last year, but super excited, want to support them and the success of their daughter, who's now Miss Alaska. So been a good week for Alaska, I think.
Very cool to hear all of the stuff happening with Miss America, Miss Alaska. I know we're hoping that one day she'll come to South and we can meet up with her. Speaking of South, Dr. Allman, I know, at least for me, the biggest news is going maskless this week. For me, it's been weird to see kind of like people's chins. And it's like, hey, I just imagined you had a different chin than what you actually look like. And so I know that's been a big deal lately here. And do you have any other updates for us, Dr. Allman?
I think the only other update is just, I think I've alluded to it before, this is the time of year where we plan for next year. So it's one foot in this year, getting things like graduations, proms, senior fun days, all those rituals that occur at a lot of different schools across the state, well planned. And this year, I think students will get to participate in them without too much worry of COVID and COVID mitigation, which I think is a good thing. It feels pretty freeing to not be in masks right now. I just hope that we can keep the lower rates, right, without having to have masks on, so that we can have that freedom. It's, I think, easier to communicate. Everyone's in a bit better spirits during the day, and it also doesn't stop those folks from wearing a mask who want to wear one because they may have medical reasons or protecting other people. So that's all good stuff. And it's good to hear, too, that at the state level, there's work on recruitment and retention. I think we really are at the school level, and I would say I probably speak for most principals, really needing good folks to hire. There's going to be a lot of turnover in the next handful of years. And so we really need to encourage folks to get into education and also make it, a profession that is, I guess maybe comfortable is the wrong word, but is productive to follow and feels rewarding rather than overwhelming all the time, because I think that's been the last 2.5 years, especially with COVID. So those are just kind of the things on the tip of my mind. I'd also give a shout out to Miley Johnston, who was a Miss Alaska. And as it happens, as that ball was going on the first floor of the Captain Cook, I was in the crow's nest having dinner. So it was my 14th anniversary last week. So we're all in the same building, like all the Eagle River people at the same time, I guess. So anyway, something about Eagle River and Miss Alaska's, although Royals is a service grad, we'll just begrudgingly give her that respect. So time for South to get themselves elevated, right? So that's
right.
it for me.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Allman. With that, I'm going to pass it over to Tristan for sports.
Hello, Alaska. For sports this week, we have some exciting news. Today's the start of high school soccer, and tryouts are today. So make sure to have whatever you need for your school. Speaking of high school sports, this past weekend, Service High won cross-country skiing up in Fairbanks. On another note, Blaine Buddy Streepor took his 9th Ferrandi victory this last Sunday. With all these victories, it only feels appropriate to mention that Team 7, Tyler Ackelstead and Nick Olsed, were crowned Iron Dog 2022 champions. That's all for sports this week. Back to you, Griffin.
Yeah, thanks, Tristan. I think that's all we got for today, guys. If you have any questions, submit them at southvote.com. And as always, remember to follow us on Instagram at SAHSTheDen. And as always, remember to keep your claws sharp, Wolverines.